Hey, I'm Jim from Alabama, and I'm here with one of my great friends, Gil Broussard. I'm sure that y'all probably know him. If you haven't heard any of his information, I'm sure that you've heard his name before. He is a wonderful amateur astronomer and has got some great information that he has dug up from all different sources, ancient sources, all the way up through. Um, Almost modern sources about a coming event that is going to affect all of us here on this planet. So, without further ado, here he is, Gil Broussard.
But thank you, Jim, for inviting me to this interview.
Well, you're more than welcome. We are so excited to hear what all you've got today. Um, let's start with some of the current events. All the things that are happening today, Gil. There's a lot of confusion in the world with all this COVID stuff. It seems like all the governments are coming together as one. They're acting as one unit. And when in history has that ever happened? Normally, we see governments fighting and bickering amongst each other and everything. But with this is totally different. It's the governments of the world acting as one. And for me, that raises a lot of red flags, okay, because you never see that. Um, can you expound on that a little bit?
Yes, this is part of the my my estimate that I gave on what we should see before Planet X arrives, or what I like to call it Planet-7X, to separate the data from the false and the actual. That two, they'd have to figure some way to reduce population. Three, to better control the population. One would be the financial control. One is food control, and probably fuel prices, to where people can't travel as easy. So this COVID also, they have to reset the currency globally. And this virus had like a double, maybe triple effect. We're going to talk about only just two of them because the amount of time we have to record this. One was to slow down the velocity of money, and the other one was to work on the population, to reduce the global population. So they slowed down the velocity of money for this reset that's coming up. And I'm hearing a lot of chatter that we're extremely close to this reset. Right. And some of the things we need to confirm that the reset is close is, one, that they will arrest some of the guilty parties, whether with COVID or stealing currency or whatever. Maliki's being kicked out of the parliament in Iraq. That means he loses his immunity from persecution. And he was one of the culprits that stole a lot of dinar. And he may be riding on Hillary and a few other ones and Biden, who were involved with that stealing. And two would be, we're looking at real estate collapsing, starting with Asia. That will impact the globe. Well, if real estate prices fall, then that makes the banks, which is holding real estate as collateral, no longer solvent. And that gives a reason for the government to come in and manage and take over the banks, because they can't afford the insurance because the government's broke. So minimize how much money you have in a bank. Get you some dinar and gold and silver, whatever. All of these items are going to go up in the near future. And it looks like it's very imminent. And what I'd like to talk about is what we found recently in the Hebrew calendar. On January 24th, which would be the 20th on the Hebrew calendar, the 11th month, which is tomorrow, according to this recording we're doing. That's when Yeshua got baptized, or in Hebrew, mikvad. And after that, he went into the wilderness for 40 days. Well, the term 40, the numbering of 40 on time is usually a form of judgment. And I'm just kind of wondering, this is not something I'm saying going to happen. I'm just worried about it, let's say, that there might be a parallel to this, that the world might have 40 days before its judgment, which we're talking about CO4, global war of some type, that a quarter of the world population dies. So, but before that is CO3, which is massive misinflation, where it takes a person all day to work. If a person works at minimum wage at $15 an hour at 8 hours, that's roughly around $120 without taxation in there.
Right.
So a plate of food might cost as high as that, $120. So that would be CO3, and the reevaluation of the currencies globally will cause this hyperinflation. So that's why these two are very close to each other. And maybe we might see a war roughly 40 days later if there's a parallel to what Scripture's showing us. We don't know that unless we observe some of this. But the blessing is for the bride and the bridemaid. Remember, he said it's like a wedding. It's not a real wedding. And it's not a real bride. It's, it's people, his elite group that's following his covenant. They meet up in Jerusalem. So this would be the blessing that we would be waiting for. And I hope to be one of them, which we won't know because it says Yeshua does the choosing.
Right.
And it's only a remnant. That's the scariest word in the Bible to me, is that word remnant. This is the first taking away. This is not the rapture. Rapture is the second taking away, where it says all believers and the dead are first. There's no mention of the dead in this one. And the rapture, you can be anywhere in the world. This one, it specifically states you have to be in Jerusalem near Mount Zion, and it's only a remnant, and there's no dead involved.
Right.
And Yeshua comes mid of night. So I'm planning on leaving. I'm hoping to get everything packed and ready after the blessing happens within 30 days. I do not want to be in this country at the 40-day mark. And that would give me 10 days to find an apartment, food, supplies, and kind of get a little bit ahead of it to where you can stay in your apartment, fairly easy, because there might be terrorism on the streets over there. So that's kind of what the basic plan is at the moment, and where we might be. Remember that if we can trust what the news is telling us, and often we can't, so this is a maybe. If we see the global reset, then that will usher in this inflation, and that means CO3 has started. But we have to see it. So there's two things that would either make me go, either siding of the planet or the reset of the currencies globally. Either one of those would cause me to leave to be in Mr. Jerusalem.
Right.
So,
And there's a lot of things going on, behind the scenes. It's like there's layer upon layer upon layer of deception for the people, not just here in America, but all around the world. I saw a report just the other day that said that China has actually cut off the rest of the world. They're starting to close themselves in, and close off the rest of the world because they see that globalism is pretty much dead. You were talking about the real estate debacle with China and everything. Evergreen is actually not paying any of their debts to the rest of the world, but they are, from this report, they are paying off the people that are in China, that are Chinese as well.
yes.
Another thing with food, you're talking about food. China is the number 2 largest owner of American farmland. Can you guess who number 1 is?
No, who?
Bill Gates.
Oh, wow.
Bill Gates is the number 1 owner of American farmland. China China is number two. So, that to me uh, says, hey, the people that control the food control the people. So,
Yes, if you can, remember, before this planet arrives, we're going to see the control of our finances. We're going to see higher fuel prices where we can't hardly afford, to better stage a riot, at Washington, D.C. It just won't be able to be affordable.
right.
They will control food. They'll probably do some type of what you call that, the rationing.
Yeah.
And if a person steps out of line, well, he may lose his rationing.
Right.
So you have a forced starter in a way, and they're going to have terrorism, and we might see a EMP scenario in multiple places in the globe. This would give them the reason to shut down the electrical grid. Like I said, there has to be some reason they have to develop why they have to shut down the nuclear power plants, as well as some other grids, because you can't have them operating during a meteor storm. They can't, that would be entirely too dangerous. So having some sort of threat militarily would be one scenario that they could generate. And EMP would kill probably a quarter of the world population if it went, in all of these nations, because the lack of water, not being able to walk to get food and everything. Only probably mostly the fit would be the ones left, or people who have generators. Any just like our area around the coastline, most of us are prepared for a hurricane that we can last 2 to 3 months. I don't think it will last longer than that before they'll come on with some portion of the electricity again. And then after that, of course, is the peace agreement. After that war, that's the peace agreement. And somewhere around that peace agreement is the 40-day warning of our planet. I think maybe the peace agreement might come closer to the time of the meteor storm, which is CO6 and CO7. They're 150 days apart, and there's really a meteor storm, not a meteor shower. The Bible says to expect on average the hailstones or the meteors to be equal to a talent, which is around 57, 58 pounds per talent or per meteor. Well, I drew up a little drawing that showed us what a meteor, which is around 40,000 miles per hour, what it would do. That was equivalent to the largest bomb we used to drop on Vietnam, which was the 2,000 pounder. That was equivalent to 2 of them dropping at the same point. But if it's at the speed of a comet, which is, I'm taking the minimum speed of closer to around 80 something miles, 80,000 miles per hour. Well, it gets to where it's like 2 bunker busting bombs, or equivalent to, I think, possibly 12 2,000 pounders. There's a very large difference whether or not we're being hit by meteors or comet fragments. And this Planet X, no matter what you may have heard over the internet, but the data is pointing to a planet-sized comet. Okay, and it right now its magnetic field is stronger than the core of Jupiter, not Jupiter outer dimensions, but its core. And we don't know what exactly the core size is, but there's estimates on what it might be, because Jupiter does not have the effects that we're seeing around Earth at the moment. So it was affecting us when it was on the edge of our solar system. Now it's somewhere inside us, because the objects right next to Earth are affected. It has to be in our neighborhood. The meteors and the comets orbits around Earth are being warped by unknown, what they say gravity, but it's actually the magnetic fields of it that are warping it. And now it's starting to cross Earth's path. That's why you've seen a large uptick on fireballs entering the Earth's atmosphere. The atmosphere of Earth, in other words. It's an exponential rise. And that's dangerous. We're in a shooting gallery again. Earth could run into something much larger than what we can handle.
Right. And we were talking the other day about a video that I had sent you about the Tonga um, um, volcano or
right?
something like that.
The
The
explosion.
right, the footage showed a small object just before the impact, and supposedly a splash. Of course, we could just barely see it, but you were just talking about the magnitude of energy that one of these meteors or meteorites would have on Earth. Um, do you think that might could have been one of those stray meteorites, or I think some people were saying it might be even a missile or something?
It's hard to tell from just the video. We need more data,
Hmm.
but it appears as if something from the sky did hit that spot,
Hmm.
and it was a small object. Now, I've heard that it had a magnitude 6 on a scale of equivalent to the quake level.
Hmm.
Well, if you look at the Richter scale, that's equivalent to the same size bomb of 15 kiloton that hit Hiroshima, would
Hmm.
cause a magnitude 6 quake. So we have some similarities between a
Right.
bomb, and also keep in mind that a comet fragment or a meteor fragment can make the same mushroom cloud. It can make the
Hmm.
same effects as one, except there's no radiation.
Right.
That's the only signature that would tell us if we went there with a magnetometer. If there's no radiation, then
Mhm.
it had to be a comet fragment or a meteor fragment.
Right, right, exactly. Well, let's kind of back up a little bit from today's events, and let's kind of go back in time to when you first realized that, hey, there is something going on, something uh, um, that could be headed our way. And let's talk about, I believe it was the Chinese guest star.
Right.
That
We're
was your.
looking for evidence to confirm whether or not this object actually exists and whether or
Mhm.
not we have anything to be concerned about. That was the first question that I was trying to get answered,
Mhm.
because I was a hardened skeptic at the time. Let me share the screen a little bit, and we can show one of the drawings here. This is the chart for the Asian guest star of 1054.
Mhm.
We had 3 different groups of astronomers. They were from China, Korea, and Japan. These were the emperor's astronomers. And this was documented in the emperor's records, 3 different emperors. Keep in mind that if you documented something wrong or falsified anything, you and your family could have had your head chopped
Right.
chopped off.
Right.
So we have 2 white paper reports, which I show at the bottom down here, of the reevaluation of the eastern and western records of the supernova 1054.
Mhm.
This is telling us that the supernova happened a couple months earlier, and that this part of the report is not the supernova, because they don't know what it is, but
Mhm.
they show you the evidence, which is perfect. It showed it in the writings of the Chinese, Koreans, and Japanese. They had used the same alphabet at the time.
Mhm.
So, and what this ended up showing us is that this object moved through multiple constellations.
Mhm.
A
And
supernova is
this was
stationary.
reported. I'm sorry for interrupting, but
Mhm.
and this was reported across multiple groups of Asian people, right? The Chinese, the Koreans. Is that
And the
right?
Japanese,
And
right?
the Japanese, right?
Right. This is recorded by the astronomers of the emperor. Now, keep in mind, I drew here the direction of the supernova, which is the Crab Nebula that
Mhm.
they first thought it was, and I want to show you that it's stationary; it doesn't move. Okay, so as Earth is moving around in its orbit around the green circle you see here, I have the first initial of each month. Okay,
Mhm.
and then I plot what the astronomers actually saw, and also it's included European data, which was not as accurate as the Asians because they just stated a day and if it was morning, but hardly any reference. It was just in the sky. But the Asians give the exact position on how close it was to a given star, what constellation, what day it was, what time, everything, month. So we can plot the position of Earth viewed from morning or evening on a time, and that's what these gray lines are. These are where Earth was at the time, looking at the position, and we were able to plot an orbit, a segment of its orbit. You see? Now, someone might ask, well, how could you plot its orbit? Well, the closer you are to the sun on an orbit, the faster it goes. The further out from the sun, the slower it goes. So to hit the viewing positions on these dates, you have to have what's called a sweet spot of the orbit that matches from day one to the last day that they saw it, for you to get the right orbital path.
Right.
And this happens to be a separation between the two crossings of Earth orbit. This object crosses Earth orbit twice, one in March, April, and one later around the end of August.
And those dates are significant as well too, because it's it's around Passover and around Sukkot, right?
Right. So this orbit could be off possibly maybe 2 weeks, either plus or minus, but it's 150 days apart. Okay. That has been confirmed. Also biblical records as well as the astronomy records.
And the 150 days is specifically mentioned in the Bible, I think,
Twice.
multiple times.
One in Noah's flood, which this had a part to do with that, and in the book of Revelation. You have to know the Old Testament to be able to figure out the last book of the Bible, which is the book of Revelation. Without the data in the Old Testament, you're somewhat lost on the book. This last book combines the data points and the events when you talk about Earth tilting, the drought phases, the different the meteor showers, the 12-hour delay during Joshua's day, the tilting of Joseph of Egypt, the tilting of Hezekiah. They were both 26 to 28 degree tilt. We have artifacts that proves how much Earth tilted. Earth did not flip on its axis 180 degrees like some people are saying. That didn't happen. No. Okay, it was a tilting of 26 to 28 degrees. Only about 2 to 3 times it came close enough to Earth to where it actually caused Earth to tilt. Okay, so it passed 14 times in the biblical records, another 5 in secular, but only 3 out of the ones were close calls.
Right, and we can get into all those artifacts for all the people that that want to drill down into those artifacts. We can do a whole nother video just on all the artifacts that you found too. And
sure, we have more than the artifacts I've showed right here on this charts, but these are the main ones that gives us the except for the Chinese coin on the bottom chart. The rest of these gives you within a 2 to 3 hour window of the actual event occurring. Gives you the date, the month, and a 2 to 3 hour window. Because the Earth is rotating, remember? So every 2 hours, you're losing one of the constellations and getting a new one up. So when they show you 6 constellations, that gives you a certain time of the month, right there. Then the planets is it's almost like looking at a watch with 16 hands that are all running at a different time, which is what the planets are doing. Jupiter, Mars, Venus, Mercury, the moon are all moving at a different time frame. So they have to be within a certain constellation as they show in the artifacts at that month. And that boils it down to a 2 hour window.
Right. And this graph that you have up here, you have it titled "The Chinese Guest Star." That's just so fascinating to me that these ancient astronomers were so precise, and we think today of an astronomer as having huge telescopes and stuff. These guys didn't have any of that, but yet they were
Right.
still able to pinpoint and map out the orbit for this. It's
That
just amazing.
that's an excellent point. The telescope was not even invented yet. This is eye naked eye observation.
Hmm. Hmm.
Okay, and they saw this object for 26 months, 13 months coming in, 13 months leaving.
Right.
It can't be a normal comet.
Mm-mm.
Normal comets are only seen for 2 to 3 weeks.
Right.
Only a planet-sized body can be observed for 26 months.
Hmm.
A very large body.
and
So
and what percentage of comets are solid enough to make it all the way around the sun? In modern times, every time we see a comet uh, go around the sun, it basically disintegrates or something.
well, this is a metallic body. And
Hmm.
how do we know that? Well, because it destroyed the planet Ceres just prior to the exodus. It plowed through that planet and didn't lose any mass to where it would change its normal orbit. It still came back roughly something like 360 years. That's a rough number.
Hmm.
But it didn't lose any significant part of its mass. So but yet it shattered Ceres into billions of pieces, which is called the asteroid belt today. Asteroid belt is between Mars and Jupiter. Okay.
Right.
And that's where it picks up a lot of the debris that trails it when it's going to bring this meteor shower to us on this next event. And the Bible tells us it's the worst event in all of Earth's history. Noah's
Right.
flood is not the worst. This next event is.
Right. Now, when it destroyed Ceres, and I believe that you actually decoded a ancient um, uh, ceiling that actually depicts Ceres, but when it went through Ceres, that slowed the orbit down. It did slow it down some. It didn't lose any mass or anything, but it did slow the orbit down from its normal 360 to 400-year orbit. Correct?
The artifact that gives us the date of the Tower of Babel when it was destroyed. Remember, the top of that was burned.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and how do you burn clay
Yeah.
or which is baked and
Yeah.
hardened brick?
Mm-hmm.
The base was sank. It sank into the ground, and there was only the middle section left, and that was there to testify to the event. Well, you can see that thing. If you go look up where Babylon, the ones that the archaeologists have found, that was during the time of Daniel.
Mm-hmm.
So you got to look a little bit further south because this is a different time period. You're going to see the base of a ziggurat that is sunken into the ground with a moat around it, basically. And that was the Tower of Babel right there.
Mm-hmm.
It's just south of the old city. And this artifact, this ceiling, actually depicts Ceres in the lower right corner,
Mm-hmm.
right here. And this is, I think, the first artifact that I was able to find that actually shows Ceres there.
So, Gil, we've kind of skimmed over the artifacts, and like I say, we'll do a whole separate video and drill down on those. But let's come on to the more modern side of things. Has there been any events that are related to um, Planet-7X here in the modern times, or something that we could kind of make a parallel with? I know that you've mentioned the Carrington effect, and a lot of the people listening may be familiar with the Carrington effect, which happened in the 1800s, late 1800s, and fried a lot of the telegraph wires. So, could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, in 1859, it was called the Carrington event, where the sun uh, did a mass CME, mass misejection of plasma that hit the Earth, and any large, long lengths of cable like the telegraph cables or the railroad tracks, absorbed a lot of that energy, and the insulation melted on some of the telegraph cables, and some of the operators got electrocuted. Even some of the railroad ties got extremely hot enough to where some of the railroad ties would catch on fire. So it was a major event in history. Luckily, civilization was not as it is today, a electronic type transistor age here. But what the key point to that is that if you take the last time that Planet X had passed in our solar system, which according to a wood carving in Germany, that was in 1697. And subtract the years from 2022, this coming April, let's say, and divide that by 2, what that gives you 1859, the exact year of the Carrington event.
Wow.
Which in physics, if you look at I think the physics model is much more correct than the astronomy model on how the universe works, and that it's electric. That if you take an orbital path, okay, of 325 years here, it would have reached aphelion. Means the furthest point from the sun exactly at 1859. And that it's on its way back, and it should arrive roughly around April of this next year, is where I'm placing somewhere around the 20th. We have to see. That's using also the biblical records to help us pinpoint a date. Remember, that's an estimate. That's not a fact yet. We have to have a visual to confirm its arrival, then look at it through a telescope, document the angle, and then calculate the true arrival date. It may match, it might not match. But so far, many things that right now have matched the Bible. CO1, CO2, we're about to go into CO3 and 4. I don't have a problem believing the Bible and looking at the science that it's telling me and matching it with because it parallels. The stories in the Bible of Planet X arriving 14 times by eyewitness account match the exact models that we generated in the software as far as the series of what events and what occurred, from the droughts to the meteor shower to Earth tilting to plasma strikes, everything.
Right.
And they could not have gotten that right because they didn't know the science. So they had to live through it.
Right. Everybody reads the Bible all the time, and that's the biggest secret, I think, of the Bible. There is, it's right in front of everybody's face, but everybody can't put the dots together, and so thank you so much for for doing all your research and everything, and actually helping us to connect the dots and to see everything. When I first heard your first interview, years ago, I had been studying the Bible for years, since I was a little kid and everything, and especially eschatology. And that first interview that I heard of yours, it's just like, boom, a light bulb went off, because I was able to see clearly everything, how the stories related with each other, and how that this object, made it all happen. And
remember,
if God's, if
because
God's
the Bible's using ancient terms, like the fiery dragon. Oh, that's the Asian. Remember, Israel is on the continent of Asia, and the silk market went through that area. So fiery dragon is a term that the Asian used for a comet. In Europe, it was a fiery sword. Both of those two call outs are being used in the Bible. Well, that's the term for comet. Well, for a meteor shower, it's fiery hail. So you have to look at the terms because they didn't have the same terms or the knowledge we have today, and they described it with what they with the words they had at times. So
Right.
yeah, it stands out once you know this.
Right. Exactly. Exactly.
The key point is for the public to be aware. Look in the southwest skies. You see Venus that comes up every year, and then it dips down around that same area. Is where we're looking to see this comet to Monsieur Pierre.
And is that early in the morning or late in the evening, or?
It could be either one. Well, that would be in the evening if it's in the southwest. Morning would be the southeast.
Okay.
But I think throughout most of this time is going to be in the southwest until it gets closer. Then it'll be, the tail is going to stretch over half the sky. And then when it gets really close, it'll fill up the sky almost.
And for the new viewers, can you kind of explain the ecliptic plane? Like if somebody walks outside their house and everything, how would they find or know where the ecliptic plane is? And
It's
maybe
the
real
same
ship to the
path.
moon.
It's the same path as the sun travels during the day.
Mm-hmm.
That is the ecliptic plane. And so whenever, if you memorize where, because at different parts of the year, it's either higher or lower, and that's where the sun is, that's where you look. This object has to be on the ecliptic for us to have 2 meteor showers, 150 days apart, because the other fixed point is the center of the sun. That doesn't shift. So you have 3 fixed points. So mathematically, it tells us it can't shift off the ecliptic. Otherwise, it wouldn't be a threat to Earth. Right. Maybe with 1 meteor shower, but this has 2 meteor shower, 150 days apart. You can read it in CO6 and CO7. And there's a similar account of this in Hezekiah, where the shadow went backwards for him. And then X amount of time later, the enemy that was outside the gate of Jerusalem was killed at nighttime. 185 soldiers were killed. Well, that was the second event, actually.
Well, Gil, thank you so much for being with us and sharing all this material that you've gathered, everything. And for all the viewers, like I say, we will do another video. We'll actually start doing a series of videos. We'll do one on the whole timeline of Planet-7X, as well as all the artifacts and a lot of others. So be looking forward to those, okay? And thank you so much, Gil.
Well, thank you, Jim. Appreciate it. Bye-bye.